Hey Rad World, the first major blockbuster has dropped for 2018, and that movie is Black Panther. Let's talk about it. Black Panther stars Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, Letitia Wright, Dana Gurira, Daniel Kaluuya, Forrest Whitaker, Andy Serkis, and Martin Freeman, and is directed by Ryan Coogler. Wow, there's a lot of people in this movie, and they are all fantastic. This is probably the best Marvel movie when it comes to how fleshed out all the side characters are. I'm just going to jump right into this review because this movie was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was definitely up there as far as one of my favorite Marvel movies. I would not call it my favorite film, but I would say it is definitely one of my favorites. Let's start out by talking about Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. I feel like a lot of reviewers aren't really tackling his performance a whole lot, and that's because his performance in the film is very subtle. A lot of the supporting characters do kind of outshine him in just overall like charisma and like humor. You laugh at a lot of the other characters. You root them on. Where Chadwick Boseman, as much as you root him on throughout the film, his performance, as I said earlier, is just it's a subtle performance. He's a character that is very high intelligent. He's the king of Wakanda. He is royalty, but he doesn't come off as very arrogant and kind of douchey, similar to that maybe of like a Tony Stark or a Doctor Strange. This character, T'Challa, he is just he's a very well-mannered character. Let me put it that way, I guess. But absolutely fantastic performance. If you liked him in Civil War, you will like him here. Let's move on, though, to what I probably would say is the best Marvel villain that we have right now. The best MCU villain. Definitely Michael B. Jordan's Eric Killmonger. This character is so well fleshed out. We understand his motivations. We understand why he's doing what he's doing. Similar to that maybe of Michael Keaton's Vulture. But this is just on a whole nother level where we feel for him so much that we are saddened by the events that take place, like why he does what he does. It's almost sad because once you understand why he's doing it, you want to root for him, but at the same time, the way he's going about things is not necessarily the right way to go about them, but you understand why he's doing it, and it's almost heartbreaking. I love it so much. It's a fantastic, charismatic performance by Michael B. Jordan. Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia is an amazing performance. She plays the love interest to Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. These two actors on screen together have a ton of chemistry, and her character is such a strong character. She's a badass. I love to see her on screen. I cannot wait for more of her in future installments here in the MCU. Letitia Wright plays Black Panther's sister. She's awesome. She's like Q in the James Bond movies. She's like this high intelligent scientist. Like she develops tons of tech and stuff. She's just awesome and really funny, and God, she's great. She's one of my favorite characters in this movie. All right, we got to talk about Dana Gurira. As you know, as Michonne from The Walking Dead, she is a total badass. She plays kind of like one of the Kingsguard. I love her performance and just how awesome she is. There's so many like little subtle things that she does throughout this movie. There's these little nuance, just looks and moves that she does that just makes you fear her character as much as you love her character. She's a total badass, as we know from The Walking Dead, but just through and through. I want to see her do more action stuff. I want to see her in more blockbusters. I want to see her just kicking ass on screen. Daniel Kaluuya's character is the only character that's probably not as well fleshed out as I would have liked to see. His character does have some important roles within the film, and I wish that his motivations would have been just a little bit more clear. But overall, a great performance. I just wish they would have given him just a little bit more backstory or just a little bit more of reasoning into some of his character motivations throughout the movie. But his performance is top notch. This guy is great. He's going places. I absolutely loved him in Get Out, and I love him in this movie too. I wish it would just give me a little bit more there. The characters are just so rich. Everybody is just fleshed out unbelievably well, like to a point of I just didn't expect to have so many new favorite characters within a world that has already so many characters that I love. This movie gave me like 5 more characters that I really care about and am very interested in where they go down the road. It's insane how they were able to do that. Let's talk about that soundtrack for a minute, because it is a killer soundtrack. I love the way that the music in the film plays along with the story very well. I think that there's a lot of times where soundtracks can kind of turn a movie into sort of music video montage kind of stuff. This doesn't happen at all in this movie. I think that the music choices work perfectly within the film. I think that all of the like Wakanda stuff has this like African drum and percussion that is absolutely fantastic, that then kind of transitions and molds into this hip hop that just makes perfect sense within the story. And I love the transition of the music along with the transition of tone within the film itself. It works perfect. Absolutely killing it on the score soundtrack aspect of the movie. The music is just great. All right, let's talk about the action sequences, because this is where I have a couple of issues within the movie, and they're pretty much my biggest flaws within the film. There's a chase sequence in the movie that is, for the most part, a fun, awesome little chase sequence, but the problem with it is it doesn't have any consequences. They make a big joke within the sequence that I think undermines how just like dangerous and crazy what they just went through was, and I felt like if they would have treated it with just a little bit more seriousness, I feel like for me personally, it would have been a better scene. There's a lot of heavy CGI characters jumping around that I don't appreciate so much. I think that some people will, and it won't bother them, but for me, there is some just very noticeable CG within this sequence. And the one of the ending sequences, there's a fight between a couple of characters, and it cuts to like these characters fighting, and then cuts to these characters fighting, but these characters are now completely computer generated, fighting and falling through the sky, fighting, and it just becomes a little too cartoony for my taste. It's heavily CG, and when it's cutting between scenes that are heavily CG'd characters to then here's the real like the actors, and then back to the CG, it's just extremely noticeable when you're cutting back and forth between the two. Had it all been one giant CG fight, I probably still wouldn't have enjoyed it too much, but it wouldn't have been so jarring, I think, between cuts. On the pacing of this movie, I thought the pacing was done really well, to the point of, in my viewing, the power went out a couple of times, and the movie had to stop and then restart up again, and which could really ruin a movie-going experience. But this movie was so great that the pacing was fine. I mean, as soon as the movie started, you jumped right back into it so quickly that you forgot that there was even an issue with the screen. I went on for a while before I realized that, oh, I'm worried the power might go out again. The thought didn't even cross my mind. I was just sucked right back into the film so quickly. As I said, the pacing is just probably the best paced film in the MCU. Maybe. I'd have to think about that one. One more thing about this movie is that it does have a social commentary that runs throughout. It doesn't beat you over the head. That's a worrisome that I have sometimes with going into any movie that has a message or is teaching some kind of a lesson. Sometimes it can be very heavy-handed and beat you over the head with it the entire time. This movie is a movie that I thought would probably have some kind of social commentary throughout it. The social commentary, though, that it gives is not one that I expected and thought was absolutely perfectly used throughout the story of the film. I think the film gives a great message, and I think that it's just a perfectly subtle undertone throughout the film that it suits the characters and the story extremely well. All right, let's wrap this thing up. I'm going to give Black Panther an 8.5 out of 10. I absolutely loved this movie. My only issue is that there are some sequences that rely probably a little too heavily on CG, and the CG that's in it is not the greatest CG. It really, for me, in my tastes, I did not appreciate that. That's pretty much my biggest flaw with the movie. But all of the characters and the story and everything is so well fleshed out throughout it that stuff can be easily ignored, because when you walk out of this movie, you're not talking about the CG or even the action sequences. Even though the action sequences in the movie are really awesome, there are some really great scenes in the film, you're talking about the characters. This movie gave us so many more characters to love within the MCU that I didn't even think that was possible at this point in Phase 3, right, of the MCU. I did not even think that was possible, to give us one movie that introduced all these new characters and we care about all of them, and that is just amazing. So bravo, Ryan Coogler. this was a kick-ass movie. I cannot wait to see what you do further down the road as a director, and I can't wait to see what the MCU does with all of these new characters that have been introduced. So, with that said, if you liked this review, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more episodes just like this one, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Rad Entertainment.